Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, September 4th. That means that football kicks off tomorrow. Today, we are finishing up our NFL preview before we get into some predictions tomorrow and other stuff with the official GSMC Sports by GSMC Podcast Network NFL Awards Show. We're going to predict the 5 major awards today: the MVP, the Offensive Player of the Year, the Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Defensive Rookie of the Year. Those are our 5 segments today. We're going to break down the trends, the historical trends, my personal picks. We've got a top 5 list for me as well. We'll go through all 5 of those awards. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate you guys sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Like I was saying, we are going to get into our top 5 MVPs, our MVP discussion here. And right here on the right, you can see my top 5 MVP picks. We've got, I guess it's the left for you, we're mirrored. We've got at number 1, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow currently sitting the best price point you could find him, at least from what I saw on a conglomerating website, at plus 1,000. Patrick Mahomes at plus 500. Anthony Richardson, which is my dark horse pick, at plus 4,000. CJ Stroud at plus 1,200. And Josh Allen at plus 900. Now let's talk about this list a little bit, right? Obviously, the MVP has become a quarterback award. It's not only for quarterbacks, but the last non-quarterback to win it was Adrian Peterson back in 2012 when he was just that close to breaking the all-time single-season rushing record. He did his thing in 2012. This is an award that doesn't go to repeat winners that often. In fact, it's only happened 6 times. The last time was relatively recently. It was Aaron Rodgers who, like we said, last time he played was around an MVP level. Aaron Rodgers in 2020 and 2021. So I feel like the people that are on Aaron Rodgers to fall off a lot are a little insane. But these 5 guys that I have here, I have in this order for a reason. First of all, you have to be on a winning team. Almost all of the quarterbacks that have won the MVP award have been on a winning team, a team that not only has won more games that they've lost, a team that has won their division, but a team that also has won more than 12 games. Now, there have been quarterbacks that don't win their division, but not in the last 11 years. Joe Burrow is at the top of this list because I think this Bengals team is going to be great. Now, the Jamar Chase situation is an interesting one. We don't know what's going to happen with him, and that's obviously going to affect the play of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a guy that has not won an MVP. That would be the first time since 2019 that something like this has happened. If you're looking to follow that trend, Patrick Mahomes on this list. You can look to Aaron Rodgers, even see if he can have a bounce back year. Guys like Lamar Jackson, although, like I said, there's only been 6 repeat winners in the history of this award, so that's not going to happen too often. But again, this is going to go to a quarterback that wins a lot of games, and all of these quarterbacks I have winning games. Other than Josh Allen, I have all these teams making the playoffs. Josh Allen is an interesting one, though, because I think in his case, he's a guy that could buck the trend of needing to make the playoffs to win the MVP. The MVP is, of course, very tightly aligned with the success of your team. Josh Allen loses his top receiver, loses almost all of his weapons, but we know he's that kind of talent that can get over it. Josh Allen has the arm, he has the leg, he can get those all-purpose yards. If he can cut down on turnovers, he is absolutely next up for an MVP. Patrick Mahomes is the only one on this list that has won in the past, and it's just hard to ignore Patrick Mahomes. He had a down year last season, but he's already won the MVP multiple times, going for a third MVP this year on a team that has refreshed his weapons. He, even in a down year, was really, really, really good. His down years are career years for most quarterbacks. But the guy that I want to highlight a little more is Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, for me, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, is a boom or bust guy. Anthony Richardson is a guy that could be, in all honesty, awful this year. He's only played 4 games in the NFL, less than 15 games in college. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's coming in at 255 pounds. That is the 4th heaviest quarterback in the history of the NFL. And you might say, that's a lot of weight for a quarterback to come in at. But if you look at him, he doesn't look like 255. It's all in muscles for him. He is going to rush over people. He might break the single season quarterback rushing record set by Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago. He's going to be able to fit these balls into really tight windows, stuff that, we only see from elite quarterbacks. His arm is a cannon. He can hit any throw on the field. Anthony Richardson, if he's able to get his accuracy together, a incredible shot that they go out and win the world, and they go out and win the MVP for the Colts. I think he's that's my hot take of the year. Anthony Richardson, top 3 MVP. Now, looking at CJ Stroud here, the case for him is pretty simple, right? He's coming off of an offensive rookie of the year season where, no question, he had one of the best rookie quarterback seasons in the history of the NFL. Arguable if it's better than Andrew Luck's or not, but one of the best that we have ever seen in the history of the NFL. He takes offensive rookie of the year from Puka Nacua that his performance would have won it in any other year. If CJ Stroud is able to take a step up or even really stay consistent from where he is now, he did all that with missing 3 or 4 games in the middle of it. He had one of the best touchdown to interception ratios in all of football. He threw for over 4,000 yards, and again, he only played about 13, 14 games. If he's able to keep that up now that Stephon Diggs is there, now that, he has another year in the system with Tank Dell, with Nico Collins, add Joe Mixon to the mix, he is absolutely a guy that if he can even just slightly improve on his stats and keep the interceptions down, should be in contention for the MVP. But my pick is going to be Joe Burrow for MVP. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Who do you have as the MVP? Are any of my picks way out there, way incorrect? Do any of your guys' quarterbacks not make the list? Which one of these 5s do you think is the most outlandish? I'd love to hear all of that. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the offensive player of the year, my offensive player of the year rankings. We'll talk about all of that and more coming up by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over the NFL MVP predictions. We are going to march right along in this segment, continuing our Sports by GSMC Podcast NFL Award Show. Today, or in this segment, talking about the Offensive Player of the Year. Before we get into that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, one more day until football. We are continuing our NFL Award Show, the official Sports by GSMC podcast NFL Award Show. In this segment, talking about the Offensive Player of the Year award. We have up my personal top 5, and we're going to go through them from top to bottom. At number 5, I have Christian McCaffrey, the reigning Offensive Player of the Year. Christian McCaffrey is a guy that, while he is going to continue to be one of the more prolific players in all of football, I don't have him at the top of it because there have only ever been 2 repeat Offensive Players of the Year, and both of them won 3 in a row. Earl Campbell, 1978, 1979, and 1980, and then Marshall Faulk in 1999, 2000, and 2001 are the only people in the history of the Offensive Player of the Year award to win it multiple times in a row. Now, that's not to say that people haven't won it multiple times. Many people have won multiple times, but winning it multiple times in a row is incredibly hard to do. And with the amount of talent that is here on the NFL, especially on the offensive side nowadays, with people like Tyreek Hill, who we'll get to in a second, or CeeDee Lamb trying to get to 2,000 yards on a season, it's just going to be really tough for Christian McCaffrey, especially in a stacked, overcrowded 49ers offense, to do that 2 years in a row. So he's down at number 5. If anyone's going to do it in this era, it's probably going to be him, but he needs to stay healthy, first of all, and he needs to replicate his production, maybe even do more than last year, because voter fatigue is a real thing. At number 4 might be a little shocking, but I have Garrett Wilson. We've seen what Garrett Wilson can do when he's not with a good quarterback. Garrett Wilson is a little bit more of a long shot, the longest shot that I have in my top 5 at plus 3,000. But he is a guy that, when he has a good quarterback, I can only imagine what he's going to be able to do. I've talked a little bit about how I think Aaron Rodgers still is going to have the juice to at least be an above-average quarterback in the NFL, probably top 15. I wouldn't go as far as top 10, but definitely top 15. You see what Wilson did last year with the combination of Tim Boyle, of Zach Wilson, of whoever else they had starting for the Jets last year. Garrett Wilson is primed to go off again. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year with a similarly bad quarterback situation. He did that with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, nothing compared to Aaron Rodgers, even in where Aaron Rodgers is at right now. Garrett Wilson could go off. He could end up leading the league in touchdowns, in receiving yards. We'll see, but that's generally the criteria to win Offensive Player of the Year. Now, it's not usually a quarterback. The last time a quarterback won was in 2018, which is why this list is composed of all running backs and wide receivers. The team success also doesn't really matter. This one is more about personal accolades. Are you going to set a record? Are you going to lead the league in yards? Real NFL backfield. Rico Dowdle is not any better. So Dak Prescott has to throw it to someone. CeeDee Lamb is the only receiver out there that's worth throwing, and him being a plus 1,100, I think, is really good odds for a guy like that. Now, they have Jake Ferguson, too. Dak Prescott is on a contract year, which means he's going to want to perform, which means is going to be a lot of stats for CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott is trying to prove he's worth a $65 million contract, which little rich for my blood, but I'm not the one giving out these contracts. CeeDee Lamb is number 3 on my list. Tyreek Hill sits at number 2, and he was so close last season to hitting that 2,000-yard mark. He slowed down the stretch. He's plus 750. If he is able to hit that 2,000-yard mark, this award is his. And if anyone is going to do it, it's going to be him. We saw how close he was able to get last season. This Dolphins team has not changed that much since then. This is still a Dolphins team that will feed him. He will be able to, he out of any receiver here has the best shot to get to that 2,000-yard mark. The Dolphins have a combination of him and Jalen Waddle. That's about it. The running game is going to be potent. That offense under Mike McDaniel, is going to be prolific as always. There's a reason that offense was so successful last year, and there's a reason they didn't feel the need to change much despite an early exit in the playoffs. Tua is going to continue to get the ball to his speedster receivers, his running backs. Tyreek Hill is my number 2 option to win Offensive Player of the Year. And number 1, I have Breece Hall. This award always seems, at least in my opinion, in recent memory, to skew towards running back, especially ones that can really rack up scrimmage yards, touchdowns. And what you want to look at is a team that's going to have really good offense. And clearly, by having 2 Jets on this list, I really do believe in this Jets offense. That defense is going to be really, really good as well. This is a Jets team that I think should be in conversation to go to the Super Bowl this year. They're a team that I think out of any team in the AFC, if there's going to be a team to knock off the Chiefs, it's going to be them, which might be a lot to put on the Jets because the Jets have a history of not being that kind of team to put your beliefs in, not being able to get that kind of stuff done. But I really like this roster. That defense is elite. You have Sauce Gardner. You have one of the best secondaries in the league. You have one of the best front 7 in the league. Your offensive line has much improved. You add Morgan Moses. You add a bunch of help on the offensive line. You draft extra help on the offensive line. You bring in extra wide receivers. You have Aaron Rodgers here. There's not really a glaring weakness on this team aside from injury proneness, right? If everyone stays healthy on this Jets team, I find it really hard to believe another team is going to be able. I find it really hard to believe that they won't be able to compete with just about any other team. And Breece Hall is, I believe, where it starts. Breece Hall is a guy that has the skills of a wide receiver at plus 1,700 odds. He could absolutely win this award. Generally, and I'm not trying to take this into fantasy, but the player that does the best at fantasy generally tends to win the Offensive Player of the Year award. It's happened the last couple of seasons at least. And Breece Hall, I think, has a real shot of being the best player. He's my pick to have the most points because you don't see Christian McCaffrey getting it twice in a row. That doesn't happen. And because of that, I think Breece Hall is my pick to win Offensive Player of the Year. But I would love to hear your thoughts on any of this. Let me know who you guys have for Offensive Player of the Year. Like I said, I've got Breece Hall. This is my top 5 here. Go ahead and let me know what you think in the comments. Anyone you think I completely missed on, anyone I'm crazy for putting in my top 5, let me know. We're going to take a quick break.
Sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we have gone through the first two awards on this official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network NFL Awards prediction show. Today, we have gone over the MVP. I picked Joe Burrow. We put out a whole top 5. Offensive Player of the Year, I picked Breece Hall. Again, put out a whole top 5. In this segment, we are turning our attention to the defensive side of the ball, talking about the Defensive Player of the Year, as well as a couple of trends that might help us decide who is going to win this award. Before we get into that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Like I was saying, we are going to continue our show here today talking about the Defensive Player of the Year. Over here on the other side of the screen from me, we have my top 5 list. Starting at number 5, Sauce Gardner. And Sauce Gardner, I think, if there's going to be anyone to buck the trend of defensive tackles winning this award, 9 of the last 10 were defensive tackles, defensive ends, edge rushers. That's just the trend. It's very rare for a cornerback, safety, someone in the secondary to win it. The last one to do that was Stephon Gilmore back in 2019 with the Patriots. I think if anyone's going to be able to do that this year, it's going to be Sauce Gardner. A lot of the requirements, at least historically, have been to be on a really good defense, to be on a winning team. Both of those check off for Sauce Gardner. And interceptions are important. You can't be like an AJ Terrell, a guy that, while he's an elite cover corner, doesn't have great ball skills, won't get a lot of interceptions. If anyone's going to be able to do that, I think it's going to be Sauce Gardner this year. He's number 5 at my list. Plus 6,600 is kind of crazy value, but there's a reason. It's because most of the time it's going to be pass rushers that get this award, pass rushers with really good stats as far as sacks go, especially. And that's where we get to these top 4. This has been the top 4 consensus for the last couple of years. You throw Nick Bosa in there as well. Those have been the top 5 guys, and they continue to be the top 5 guys even this year. If I had to replace Sauce Gardner with anyone, it would be Nick Bosa. But the reigning champion, Myles Garrett, sits at number 3. Myles Garrett sits at 3, and there has been a recent trend of repeat champions. Only 3 people have ever repeated: Lawrence Taylor, J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, 3 of the greatest defenders in the history of the NFL. All of them ended with 3, and all of them had 2 in a row, a break in between, and then one more. So 3 and 4 years for every single one of them. So repeats are not off the table. If there's going to be a next guy to have that happen, it's going to be Myles Garrett. Right now, we're looking at kind of a changing of the guard. Obviously, Aaron Donald retires this offseason. That leaves the world of the quote-unquote best defender in the NFL wide open. Right now, the title held by Myles Garrett, although any of these 4 pass rushers, Nick Bosa included, are kind of on the cusp of getting that title. Max Crosby is an interesting one. And the reason he's down at 4 is not because I don't think he's going to be great. I think him paired with a guy like Christian Wilkins on the inside are going to wreak havoc on opposing quarterbacks. But he's on the Raiders. And like I said, I think a lot of this has to do not only with your team being good, but your defense has to be good. And outside of Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, The rest of that defense is kind of terrible. There's really no other way to say it. The rest of that defense is awful, and it's not going to be a good enough support for Max Crosby unless he's able to break the Michael Strahan sack record to really be in contention for this award. But he is up there because that is something I could see him do this season. Again, Myles Garrett at 3 right now holds the crown as the best defender in football. You can argue that with me. I think he absolutely is that. If anyone is going to repeat, TJ Watt has already won one. Nick Bosa has already won one. Myles Garrett just won one. If someone's going to repeat, it's going to be Myles Garrett. I don't know if he's going to do it this year, though. I think there's too many really good defenders, and I have a strong feeling it's going to a secondary person for some reason, which is why I threw a Sauce Gardner at number 5 on my list. At number 2, TJ Watt. He is a sack machine, and sacks are very, very important. There was a tough discussion over the Defensive Player of the Year last year between TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett ends up taking it. If that comes down to it again, I think they're going to lean towards TJ Watt, especially if it's as close as it was last year, which is why he's above Myles Garrett in these rankings. And then we get to number 1. Number 1 is Micah Parsons, and Micah Parsons has been at the top of these lists for the last couple of seasons. Micah Parsons' versatility on defense, his ability to rush the passer, drop back in coverage, play linebacker, play the mic, play anywhere you want him. He's even lined up as corner a couple times, played a couple snaps on offense. He's a guy that you can really just put anywhere with his athleticism and his understanding of the game. He's going to get it done. He is my pick to win Defensive Player of the Year. Currently the favorite at plus 550, tied as a favorite with J.J. Watt. Again, 91%. Let's go through the checklist here. 91% of the winners of the Defensive Player of the Year since 1988 have been on a winning team. Check that off for the Cowboys. They should be a winning team this year. There's only been one defensive back winner since 2011. Again, Stephon Gilmore. Goes in favor of all of our top 4, Micah Parsons included. 9 of the last 10 winners, outside of Stephon Gilmore, of course, which is the exception in just about any of these trends, were top 5 in the preseason, which is our entire list, subtracting Sauce Gardner, adding Nick Bosa. And then again, there's been a couple of repeats. That one goes in the favor of Myles Garrett, a couple of those recently. So if those are all of the trends, all of these guys kind of line up for it. It's Micah Parsons' turn, though. Micah Parsons has been right on the cusp of it, behind almost record-breaking seasons by TJ Watt, behind Nick Bosa becoming the best pass rusher in all of football, behind Myles Garrett leading the Browns to a playoff berth almost single-handedly last season. You know, you can give as much credit as you want to Joe Flacco, but it was Myles Garrett and the defense that took the Browns to where they were when they made the playoffs last year with their carousel at quarterback. It's time for Micah Parsons to get it. Micah Parsons is kind of on a contract year. He's a guy that's going to want this to get more money from the Cowboys. And again, this kind of feels like a last hurrah. Dak Prescott is going to play like it's for his life. Again, contract year. Micah Parsons is playing like it's for his life. Kind of contract year. They're probably going to pick up his 5th-year option. It'd be dumb if they didn't, but maybe he gets a contract instead of just that 5th-year option. Playing for his life. CeeDee Lamb's already been paid. They can't pay all of these guys. It's kind of going to be a competition between the Cowboys offense and defense for who is going to get paid, Micah Parsons or Dak Prescott, and Micah Parsons wants that to be him. If he can get the hardware, he is in the running to go ahead and be that guy. Micah Parsons is my pick to win Defensive Player of the Year. It is going to be a tight race, though. I'm not going to sit here and say that's an easy pick, because the Defensive Player of the Year, while it's a little more predictable than the Offensive Player of the Year, that one is the most unpredictable award, or maybe even MVP. Although you can get a little more zeroed in on that because it's usually a quarterback. So really 32-ish options for that. The Offensive Player of the Year, wide open. The Defensive Player of the Year, you can kind of narrow down to those elite pass rushers. And I think it's time for Micah Parsons to get his. Who knows, though? Let me know what you think. Who is winning? the defensive player of the year. I would love to hear your thoughts. You think there's anyone on here that you think is outrageous? Is it going to be time for a cornerback or a safety to finally win one? Let me know your thoughts. Throw that in the comments. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we are going to transition into some rookie talk. There are two major awards left to give out: the Offensive Rookie of the Year and the Defensive Rookie of the Year. We're going to start off with the Offensive Rookies of the Year, talk about that award, although that one is a lot more cut and dry than most of the others. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've made it 60% of the way through our official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network NFL Award Predictions Show. We've made it through MVP. We have made it through Offensive Player of the Year, and we just finished Defensive Player of the Year, which means it's now time to turn our attention to the rookies. The Offensive Rookie of the Year will be in this segment, and then we'll finish off our show talking about the Defensive Rookie of the Years. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. We'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. One day to football. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the rookie section of this episode, starting off with the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Today, the Offensive Rookie of the Year might seem like the most cut and dry option. You have Caleb Williams at the top, and I agree. This is Caleb Williams' award to lose, but it's entirely possible that Caleb Williams can lose this award. We've seen him in the preseason. He didn't look like the best quarterback. He didn't look like the best rookie. There's plenty of other options for this award to go to. We don't want to get too locked in on Caleb Williams because anything could happen. We don't know if he's going to be this great quarterback. Now, for what it's worth, I believe Caleb Williams will win Rookie of the Year. I believe he's going to live up to at least a good percentage of the hype. Be the best rookie, not be bad, not lose it. I don't think there's going to be a better rookie, but there are a lot of good options out there. Starting at number 5, and maybe the most outlandish, Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is a guy that I am pretty high on as far as rookie wide receivers go. You have your top two, really, when you're talking about guys that are expected to break out. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, who I have above him. But outside of him, there's a lot of guys that I think could be really good. Rome Odunze, of course, but he's in a very crowded offense. I don't know how much of a target share he's going to get. Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville. He's a guy that, if he can click with Trevor Lawrence, could be the number 3, even maybe number 2 rookie. He's got that kind of explosive potential on the outside. And Keon Coleman. These are 3 guys that I highlight and I look at, but Keon Coleman gets the number 5 nod here at plus 3,700 because he's playing with the best quarterback. He's playing with Josh Allen, who I had on my MVP list in the same position at number 5. There is a real shot that if Josh Allen wins MVP, it's going to be because Keon Coleman steps up and does what he needs to do as that wide receiver 1 in Buffalo. If he's able to do that, there is a shot that he jumps up on the top of these wide receiver leaderboards. There's a shot that he is the kind of guy that, wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, kind of like Puka last year. Now, I don't think he'll end up being like that. That's why he's number 5. He's the long shot, but he's the kind of guy that I look at and he has the most potential out of these long shot guys to really surprise people this year, at least in my opinion. At number 4, Malik Neighbors. And Malik Neighbors isn't higher because of the quarterback situation. Malik Neighbors is the most explosive guy. He's a guy that you get the ball in his hands and watch him go to work. He is kind of like Kadarius Toney, if Kadarius Toney could catch the ball. You get the ball in his hands, he does magic with it. But Kadarius Toney fell off a cliff. That's the downside of Malik Neighbors. The upside is prime OBJ, right? These are guys that you want to get the ball in their hands. They've magic. He's just playing on the Giants. And as good as he can be, as good as he's going to be, I think, this season, he's going to be held back by Daniel Jones and Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock or whoever's going to be out there at quarterback for the New York Giants as the season continues. At number 3, I've got Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is, if there's going to be a wide receiver to break any of those rookie records, it's going to be him. He plays in Arizona, a place where that offense is going to be electric. I think they're going to be a top 5 offense this year, not top 5, top 10 offense this year. Kyler Murray is healthy. That's going to be a lot of fun. You have a really good running game with James Conner, who had the 2nd highest yards per carry in the entire NFL last year, only trailing Devon Achane, right? You have Marvin Harrison Jr., really the only passing weapon for Kyler Murray, and he will get the ball. We talked about it in our fantasy episode, but he's probably going to get a nice 80-ish yards a game, 7 for 80 a game. That extrapolates out to to a really, really, really good season. There's no reason not to think he's going to explode. He is the main weapon on offense for the Arizona Cardinals, and Kyler Murray and him seem to have a good connection already. Marvin Harrison Jr. is number 3 on my list for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then we get to the quarterbacks. Again, this is a award that benefit of the doubt is going to go to quarterbacks, and we saw that last season. Puka Nacua breaks all the records, but he has to go up against C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, who has one of the best quarterback seasons that a rookie has ever had. He gets that award over one of the best rookie seasons a wide receiver has ever had. And that's why we have the 2 highest potential starting rookies at the top. Jaden Daniels at number 2. If he is able to do RG3 style things, which you look at him, and obviously him being on the same team that RG3 was drafted to does help with that comparison a little bit, but they've got shades of each other in their games. He's got shades of RG3 in his games, his ability to run with the ball, and he's got a nice explosive arm down the sideline. Washington names him as the starter, the captain. He's going to be really good this year for Washington. The issue is the team's just not going to win that many games. Washington's defense is a mess. As much as I think they're going to surprise people, their defense is going to hold them back. Their secondary is awful, although I did like some of the moves they were able to make. Jaden Daniels is a guy that if Caleb Williams falters and he is able to live up to his hype, should win this award. And of course, number 1, Caleb Williams. The Bears have done everything in their power to surround Caleb Williams with the best possible team. They have one of the best wide receiver cores in the entire league. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Romo Dunze. They have solid tight end options. Cole Kmet. The offensive line is improved from last year. Caleb Williams has shown his ability to move around in the pocket, work at a structure, so even if the offensive line struggles, he knows how to deal with pressure and how to escape. Now, it's a different speed at the NFL, which is why it's not locked in, but there's a reason he's only a plus 150 odds when all of these other awards, the favorites, are sitting around plus 500, right? The defense for the Bears this year is going to be really good. Their corners, really good. Montez Sweat leading the front seven, really good. This is going to be a Bears team that has a dark horse shot of making the playoffs. They do have a tougher schedule, but Caleb Williams can absolutely win this award, should win this award. This is his award to lose. That's the kind of position that he is in. We'll see what happens, though. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you think of the Offensive Rookie of the Year awards. These are my top 5. Is there anyone on here that you think I left out? Anyone that is way too low, way too high? Do you think it's Caleb Williams' award to lose? Let me know in the comments. We're going to take a quick break here, our final break of the day. When we come back, we will be talking all about the Defensive Rookie of the Year. A very interesting conversation because there wasn't a rookie picked on defense until the 15th overall pick. We'll talk about all of that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we have finished all but one of the major awards on this official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network NFL Awards prediction show. We have been through the MVP, Joe Burrow. We have been through the Offensive Player of the Year, Breece Hall. We have been through the Defensive Player of the Year, Micah Parsons, as well as the Offensive Rookie of the Year, Caleb Williams. If you want a detailed breakdown of all of that, go check out the other segments. In this segment, though, we are taking a look at the Defensive Rookie of the Year. It is an interesting talk. It's an interesting talking point because there wasn't a defensive rookie taken until the 15th pick. In fact, there was a record 23 offensive players picked in this first round of the draft, which is where almost 90% of the defensive rookie of the years have come from. So there's not a lot of options. You have 9 possible options in that first round. There hasn't been one outside of the top 40. So if we extend it out to there, there's less than 17 options to win this Rookie of the Year. We'll talk about these 5 guys that I have in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. One day to football. I cannot wait. But like I was saying, we are going to finish up our prediction episode today talking about the Defensive Rookie of the Year. And like I said, the Defensive Rookie of the Year is going to be interesting. Record 23 offensive players taken in the first round does not leave a lot of options for us. The first player taken off the board was Liatu Latu, who I have at number 1. But in my opinion, this was a better corner class than it was an edge rusher class, which is why we have 3 corners on this list instead of more rushers. Now, you might notice that guys like Jared Verse are not on this list. He's going to be in a little more of a crowded area than these guys. I think these guys are better. I'm not a huge Jared Verse guy, as great as he was coming out of Florida State. These are the top 5 guys for me. Again, we went through the stats a little bit. Every single one has been picked in the top 40. All of these guys went in the first round. So out of the 9 defensive players that went in the first round, this is half of them. Most of those guys were taken in the first round. 81%, in fact, taken in the first round. 79% in the top 20, which there's only 5 possible options for that. Not all of them were offensive picks. So we'll talk about that later. But at the number 5 pick, I have Kenyon Mitchell. Kenyon Mitchell is one of my favorite corners in the draft. Him, Terrion Arnold, and Nate Wiggins were my 3 favorite corners coming into the draft. They all got put into really good situations too. Kenyon Mitchell joins the Eagles, a team that if they can turn around their defense, he's going to be a huge part of it. With James Bradbury going down with injury, he has the chance to step up and play a really important role while James Bradbury is down. Now, a lot of these awards, just like Defensive Player of the Year, tends to lean towards edge rushers. But I think this is a year where we're going to get a couple more corners taken. It doesn't lean as heavily towards edge rushers because a lot of times it's just the first defender taken off the board. Kenyon Mitchell is in a really good position, in a really opportunistic position to go ahead and win this award. He's got pretty good odds too, longer odds than usual, plus 1,600 to win this award. At number 4, I have Byron Murphy II, the defensive tackle playing in Seattle. Out of camp, only raving reviews off of him. He has a new head coach, Seattle does, in Mike McDonald, who turned a guy that previously I and many others had not heard of, Justin Madubuike, into a star. Now, Justin Madubuike changed his name to I didn't write it down, to his Kenyan name, but he earned himself a huge contract, had a sack in just about every single game last season, and it seems like they're going to use Byron Murphy in much the same way. Now, the defense of the Ravens is much better than the defense of the Seahawks, but that doesn't mean that the defensive tackles aren't comparable. He's another one of these slightly longer shot guys that I think could be really, really good this year, has a real shot of winning Defensive Player of the Year. Byron Murphy II is my number 4 player on this list. At number 3, we hit another corner, Terrion Arnold. He is also in a very good spot, most likely going to start for the Detroit Lions, a defense that if they can turn it around, especially in the secondary, these draft picks are going to get a lot of hype in their process for that. Now, he's not the only corner that got taken, but I think he's going to be the one that is going to prove to be the best one, right? They cleared out the secondary. The secondary was a big issue. They still have a solid pass rush, but if that secondary can step up, Terrion Arnold is going to be a huge part of that, and I like him at plus 1,400 to, again, opportunistic over here, to go ahead and be that guy. At number 2 is Nate Wiggins, and Nate Wiggins is my favorite corner in this draft. His speed, we talk about speed with corners. He ran the fastest 40 time in the combine. His physicality and size is something that we don't see. It's a rare combination of speed, size, and physicality in Nate Wiggins. And if he can stay healthy, which is a bit of a concern, he got injured at the combine after he ran his 40. But if he can stay healthy, he's a guy that is my favorite corner coming out of this draft. Maybe even my favorite defensive player. But again, they have general bias towards the pass rushers, which is why Liatu Latu is number one. 81% of players that have won the Defensive Rookie of the Year have been in the top 7. 7 of the last 15 were the favorites, which Liatu Latu is, and 8 of the last 14 were the first defensive player taken off the board, which again, Liatu Latu is. I think Liatu Latu is by far the best pass rusher in this class. You talk about Dallas Turner, you talk about Jared Verse. I think Liatu Latu is the guy that is head and shoulders above all of them. He joins a Colts system that should be really good for him. You know, he's going to get to be next to a couple of really talented pass rushers, but he can still be the star. It's not like he's going to be next to Myles Garrett or something that's going to overshadow him. He is the star if he, wins his MVP, like I said, he's going to. A couple of other guys that it might go to. You have Anthony Richardson, although that's going to be a little bit more up for debate. I like Anthony Richardson a lot. Maybe he's able to grab that one. Coach of the year. Again, I'm high on the Colts. If they're able to make the playoffs, I think Shane Steichen and the Colts could get that coach of the year. Maybe we could get some kind of surprise from a team like the Seahawks. Maybe Mike McDonald gets coach of the year. Those are some of the options for those. But let me know what you think of any of these awards. Is there anything that I missed for the Defensive Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year? I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this. These are my lists. We'll run through it one more time. The MVP, Joe Burrow, I have winning, although dark horse, Anthony Richardson. Excuse me. Offensive Player of the Year, I like Breece Hall a lot, although Tyreek Hill right behind him could have a good year as well. Micah Parsons is my favorite to win the Defensive Player of the Year. Sauce Gardner, if it's going to go to someone that isn't a pass rusher, which I have a feeling it might go to this year, although that's just a feeling. The historical trends don't really line up with any of that, so it's probably going to go to one of the top 5 pass rushers. Offensive Rookie of the Year. Caleb Williams, is his award tomorrow. We're going to do a full prediction for the Chiefs-Ravens tomorrow, as well as a couple of college football games. We're going to make sure we get you prepared for the entire NFL season. Go ahead and leave any questions you have in the comments. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Hope everybody has a great rest of your Wednesday. I hope you all tune in tomorrow for more Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. You'll have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I'll wake up. Feel like it's gonna be a bad day. I'm tired of shit in the coffee. Yeah, damn.